Are you looking to improve your performance in the boxing ring through proper strength conditioning methods? Well, I'm gonna help you here today. Let's get to it. Hey there, Brandon Willie here from Thirst Gym. And if you're looking to improve your performance in boxing, in the ring, using strength and conditioning methods when you hit the gym, this is gonna be the video for you. I'm gonna help you get stronger, more explosive, and improve your conditioning with these simple training tips. Now, when it comes to boxing, it is a very unique sport. You've probably seen many pro boxers go multiple rounds, have a massive amount of stamina, be strong, be explosive, but not have a ton of muscle mass and landing some pretty crazy punches. Now, when it comes to the strength and conditioning room, what you're gonna do for boxing is gonna look a lot different than what you would do, say, for football or baseball or basketball, because the unique demands of boxing can make it a very short sport or a very long sport, depending upon, whether you're gonna knock somebody out, whether you're very closely competitive with your opponent and you're having to go several rounds with a little bit of rest in between. And then we've also got to figure out, we got to talk about footwork and also having that power and that repeated power to continue to land those punches, because chances are you're probably going to throw at least 100 punches in any given average match. So today, these things are the things that I'm going to recommend that you do to improve that performance when you hit the gym, so that when you go into the boxing ring, you go to spar, you go to do different practice-based things, these things can help you and give you an edge. So when you get into the ring, it's not going to come down to the physicality perspective. All it's going to come down to is implementing this stuff to help you with your technique of when you throw those punches. Boxing is unique, and the first thing that I'm going to recommend is that you focus on power production. And the reason I talk about that is because, one, boxing is a weight class based sport. So you're going to want to remain in a weight class range, and you don't want to get too heavy to where you're going to have too much muscle mass. And muscle mass isn't going to slow you down. We want to make sure that the muscle mass that we have is being optimized for our power production, so when we throw those punches. Now, there's obviously different kinds of punches to where you're going to have more rotational work, where you're going to get your whole body into the punch, and then there's obviously going to be jabs where you're not going to rotate as much. It's just going to come primarily from the upper body, right? So we want to make sure that the power production that we're working addresses both of those, and it can kind of be dependent upon what you need as an athlete, but you're still going to make sure you train both qualities. So from a power production perspective, I do think that you need to make sure that you're being able to change what you're doing in terms of how you're rotating and what you're doing upper body. And so from a power production perspective, things I really like here are landmine presses and different types of med ball work and plyometric or power-based push-ups, where you're pushing as fast as you possibly can with every single upper body push that you're doing. You can even do this with the bench press, doing this against bands or chains, really focusing on developing as much power with every press that you're taking. And because we're doing that, we want this to be able to be repeated power. So we're going to want to be able to do this multiple times with moderate rest. Generally, you would want long periods of rest, and you can still do long periods of rest, but we'll get to that here in a minute. But generally speaking, you're going to want to have that repeated power from the upper body perspective. And then from a lower body perspective, we want to implement plyometrics, so that way we can move side to side. We got to understand we also got to be able to dodge things. So moving laterally is going to give us the ability to do that. So things like lateral bounds and different plyometric based drills like box jumps and different hurdle hop variations are great things to develop that twitchiness. We want to make sure that we are twitchy and fast. And I'm sure when you look at the most high level boxers, that's the first thing you notice is, wow, they have fast hands, fast feet, and they're explosive and they're decisive in what they're doing. And so by being able to train those different types of exercises into your strength and conditioning work is going to help you be a better boxer. Now, the reason I talked about the repeated power aspect is we want our reps lower. So we want to do probably about 3 to 5 reps on average with our power-based work, because we know that we're going to have to throw or use different motions more than just once in the sport of boxing. So that's where that repeated part comes from. Also, the repeated sets, being able to do them over and over and over and over, because the boxing match could be long and grueling. And so at the end of the match, you still want to make sure that you have that power that you're doing. So when it comes to our rep ranges and our power, we don't want to get those reps too high, because then that starts to get into that hypertrophy range. And if you're trying to maintain in a weight class, then that's what you want to do. Now, the hypertrophy aspect will come down to one thing, and that is, do you just need more muscle? If you're too skinny, then obviously we're going to recommend that you put some extra size on your upper back, on your shoulders, on your arms, on your legs, so that you can create more force. But if you've got a good general base of strength, that repeated power production is going to be the first thing that I recommend to be able to help you in the boxing ring. All right, the second thing that we're gonna need to focus on here as a boxer is force absorption. So that we've talked about creating that power, but we also gotta be able to absorb different forces. The unique thing about boxing is that you're gonna get hit, right? You're gonna get hit in the stomach, in the face, in the neck. Different upper body aspects is going to get hit. And so being able to absorb force is going to help you. And the way I like to look at this is, when we think about concussions, generally what's happening is your head is hitting and then your brain continues to move in your skull. And that's eventually what's gonna end up to you being knocked out, is how much your brain is moving inside of your skull. So by having a strong neck and a strong upper body to be able to absorb that force is going to give us a better chance to withstand some of those punches, but over the course of several matches. So it's kind of mixing with power production to an extent, because the first thing I'm going to recommend for that force absorption is going to be doing hang power snatches and hang power cleans. And the reason that is because you're going to have to absorb that force catching that weight here or overhead, and it's also going to let us create some power because we're going to have to be explosive with that bar, being twitchy and being fast. But the key thing I like here more so than anything else is the absorption aspect of it. And with your weightlifting based movements, again, you're probably going to do like 3 to 5 sets of probably like 2 to 4 reps. You don't want to do anything too crazy, but you want to make sure you're fast, explosive, can use some pretty decent weight. So, as a boxer, don't be afraid to use load. You need to load the barbell up for these exercises to maximize your gains from them. But you also want to make sure that you can absorb those forces appropriately. This also then continues to bleed into that power production because we can start to do heavier depth drop work. So we can go off of a 24, 36-inch box and doing a depth drop and sticking and controlling that landing and learning how to absorb that force from a lower body perspective as well. And the other thing I would recommend here is explosive landmine work. Again, kind of going back to that power production, but this is where we can actually do different rotational based work, learning to absorb that force from side to side while we can still get some of that rotational based power, but still absorbing it every single time we come down as we're doing those landmine rotations. That's one of my favorite exercises for force absorption, but also improving that rotational aspect and getting the whole body, the hips, the midsection, and even the arms all coordinated together to be able to do that. And the final thing I'd recommend here is doing neck work, okay? You're going to be taking punches to the head and to the face. And if you're not doing neck work in your strength and conditioning program, you're leaving a lot on the table from being able to protect your head, okay? So just a good old fashioned neck harness, cranking those reps out is going to be another fantastic exercise you can do. If you happen to have a training partner, you can also do different manual neck exercises going side to side as well. So there's plenty of ways to train your neck, but just make sure you're doing some kind of direct neck-based work. And then on top of that, then you also want to make sure you're doing some shrugs as well. We want to put a little bit of traps up there that's going to thicken our neck up, and that's also going to help stabilize our neck whenever we have to be able to not only move it, but once we take those hits, and again, that's going to fall more into that force absorption-based training. The next thing that we need to focus on is the technical coordination and co-contraction of movements that we're doing. And to make this very simple, this is kind of where those weightlifting movements come from, but you don't have to use a clean and jerk and a snatch with a barbell here. You can also do this with dumbbells. You can do dumbbell snatches. You can also do different push jerk and push press variations. So again, this kind of comes back to that power production, but at the same time, we want things that are coordinated. So by being able to do a dumbbell push press, a dumbbell push jerk, we can even go into a split, even with dumbbells or the barbell. You're gonna get some of that force absorption, you're gonna get some of the upper body power production, but we're also learning to coordinate multiple things here with our arms and our feet together. And then also, this is also where I like to do more lateral shuffling based work. So you can do band resisted lateral shuffles, moving side to side with that band pulling you into that and out of it, so that you're moving your footwork and co-coordinating that with your upper body. So you want to make sure that you're picking things that also develop some of that footwork and what I would say, quote unquote, speed and agility. It's just going to look different than most sports, because generally you're working on like max acceleration, forward lean, arm swing, front drive mechanics, and those are all great things for running fast, but you don't have to run in a boxing match. You've got to be able to shuffle side to side. So being able to work on different shuffling based drills, and while I'm a pretty anti-speed ladder guy, if you're a boxer, I can see where a speed ladder might come in handy if you're trying to work on some of your footwork. You would obviously want to make sure you're not looking down, and the goal is just to move your feet forward and back, so you can do different lying toe taps, or we'll do that with a a speed ladder, or you can just use a line, and then you can also shuffle back and forth, doing two-way shuffles, lateral shuffles, and even doing small pogo hops back and forth up and on a box, trying to make sure you're always on your toes, staying in a good position so that when you're sparring, you're in a position of being able to create power that we talked about in that wise athletic stance, but you're also able to shift and co-coordinate what's going on upstairs with what's going downstairs. And so if you're able to coordinate those with some of these speed and agility based exercises, and again, these can be done every single day. They can be part of your warm-up before you go into the boxing ring. They can be part of your warm-up as you're doing things in the strength and conditioning room, but you want to make sure you're co-coordinating things from the upper body and the lower body perspective, from a strength perspective, but also a speed and agility perspective as well, so you can maximize what you're doing in the ring. And the final thing that we got to talk about here as a boxer is focusing on your endurance, your stamina, your conditioning, however you want to basically word or think about that. And most boxers, I think that they need to go out for long duration runs to develop their cardiovascular work. And while that's not a bad thing, I'm not going to tell you to not go run, but we want to figure out how we can use conditioning based methods that are going to directly help your performance and give you a high return on your investment. And we kind of talked about that repeated power, but we also want repeated power from our endurance perspective. We want to be able to go several rounds without losing the power that we had at the front end of the fight. I'm sure you've seen people that come out swinging hard early, and then by the end of the match they look completely gassed because they don't have that endurance and stamina of that long-term power production in their fighting style. So things that I really like here is I like using cyclical based methods. So what that means is using things like bikes, rowers, and ski ergs, or even using things like prowlers and sleds, so that's something that you can do consistently over and over and over without a whole lot of wear and tear on your body, but you can also do at high efforts and lower efforts very quickly from one thing into the other. So you could think about doing this on like an Airdyne bike or an Echo bike or a Wind bike, whatever you want to call them, to where you're doing a hard 10 or 15 second burst, going just about all out. And then you can slow steady that in place there as well for about another 15 or 30 seconds, almost what people will call hit. And that's going to be a higher ratio than what you would normally want to develop just that top end speed. But we got to remember, we got to be able to do this repeated over and over. So we want to kind of match that work to rest interval that we might see in the fighting. But also another thing that you could do is you could do those hard bursts for 10 or 15 seconds. You can get off the bike, get off the rower, get off the skier, and then you can shadow box for another 15, 30, 45 seconds. And then you've got a way to not only work on that technical aspect of what you're doing for your sport, but you're also developing your energy systems as well. The other thing that you can do here are what I would call mixed modality based conditioning. I do think that one day a week you need to do something mixed modality. And what I mean by that is you're going to take multiple different things in the strength and conditioning room. So you can use some of those apparatuses I just talked about in this as well, but you can also pick big bang for your buck exercises like kettlebell swings, dumbbell thrusters. You can do different walking lunge variations. You can push heavy sleds. You can do farmer's carries, suitcase carries, different sandbag based work. Those are all fantastic things. And you're going to do these in a circuit based fashion, but you're going to do them with controlled work and rest intervals. So generally I like to do about a 30-second on, 30-second off here, to where I'm going to pick a exercise and do it for 30 seconds at a hard to moderate pace, so like an RPE 7 or 8. So you're not going all out, you're leaving a little bit in the tank, but you're still working hard. And then you're going to rest for 30 seconds in place, let your breath kind of catch. If you really want to, you can shadow box here as well. But then let's say we come over to a sled and we're going to push that sled for 30 seconds straight. Again, not going to be super heavy because of how long we have to push it, but we're having to make sure that we're working at a high enough effort that's going to continue to get our heart rate elevated, and then we're going to mix in different things as well. So I talked about the different exercises you can use. Really, it doesn't matter too much what you pick. You just want to make sure that you can recover from what you're doing. It's not going to affect your strength and conditioning based work possibly the next day or two, or it's going to affect your fighting style if you happen to have practice. But the goal here is to take multiple good big exercises that are somewhat cyclical in nature, if at all possible, or like I said, using kettlebell swings would be another option, something like that. And you can use these exercises to develop that power a little bit as well while you're doing it. And that's going to give you the ability to go round after round after round and be able to maintain a high level of effort in those fights, still pushing all that power that you're working, but have the stamina to get through the end of the match. And that might give you the edge over somebody that may come out incredibly strong, or if you can survive those first couple rounds, that may now put the edge in your favor so that you're there able to put in high level punches, and those technical co-coordinations that we talked about is going to come back into your favor at the end of the match. All right, that's going to wrap up today's video on what you can do in the strength and conditioning room to help you be a better boxer. Now you can notice that there's a lot of bleed through with things that we're doing here. And again, I kind of talked about some key main points here that you want to have repeated power production. You want to make sure that what you're doing is going to line up with what you're doing in the ring. So you want technical coordination based movements. So that way, not only are we mentally stimulated, but we're also having to sync our upper body with our lower body, because that's going to be incredibly important for boxing. We want to make sure we can absorb force, not only from a full body barbell based perspective, like the clean and the snatch variations, but also push presses and push jerks. But we also want to make sure that our neck and head is also very strong in terms of that force absorption. So making sure we're doing things from the shoulders up so that we can take those big hits. And then at the end of the day as well, we want to make sure that our training program is laid out nice and strong in terms of beginning to end. So working on some footwork based work, some speed and agility, then power, some force absorption, and then some conditioning. We also want to make sure that we're not trying to put on too much muscle mass. Some hypertrophy work is okay, but we want to make sure that we don't go too crazy and train like a bodybuilder, doing bodybuilding splits. That's not going to help you be a better boxer. We want these probably full body training sessions, and they should be probably about 45 to 60 minutes at the most. And if you're doing all these little things that I kind of talked about, by the time you add these all in together into one training session, you can quickly see how this flows right into one thing into the other, and then you get a high return on investment from your strength and conditioning that you're doing in the ring. So if you happen to have any questions, please let me know in the comment section below. I'd be more than happy to help you out here in terms of what you're doing from your boxing perspective. But again, thanks for checking in for today's video. If you liked it, do me a favor, smash that like button, leave a comment, share with a friend. I would really appreciate it, and I'll see you at the next video.